The emperor, who detested me to the core, actually blocked a fatal sword strike for me during my assassination. The entire palace knew he detested me to the core, hating that I occupied the position of his primary wife, and hating me even more for forcing his beloved to her death. As he lay in a pool of blood, even in death, he was settling the score with me, wishing only to have absolutely no connection in our next lives. I thought we were separated by death forever. But to my surprise, the moment I opened my eyes, I had returned to the day I was choosing a husband at 17. At this time, Xie Yanzheng was still the crown prince. Avoiding his gaze, I raised my hand and handed the betrothal jade disc to the Prince of Qin beside him. This daughter of officials wishes to marry His Highness, the Prince of Qin. As soon as my voice fell, the entire venue was shocked. After all, the Prince of Qin has no imperial favor and is chronically ill. The surrounding murmurs drifted into my ears. They said I was mad, passing up the position of crown princess. I actually chose the Prince of Qin. The Empress was stunned for a moment and solemnly reminded me,
"Marriage is no laughing matter. Yinzhang must think this through carefully."
I knew. She had always wanted me to be the crown princess, because my father had saved the emperor's life in the early years. The emperor granted me the freedom to choose my own marriage. That was the only reason she let me choose. Before the court, the empress had even held my hand and asked what I thought of the crown prince. Back then, I was deeply in love with him. Before I could even speak, my face blushed. His Highness is, of course, exceptionally wonderful. Understanding my meaning, the empress slipped the jade disc into my hand.
Then at the banquet later, Yinzhang will give the jade disc to the crown prince. As for the rest, this palace will make the decisions for you.
Only this time, she was going to be disappointed. Lifting my skirt, I knelt before her. My mind is made up. I wish to marry His Highness, the Prince of Qin. The clamor around us grew louder. Even the always cold Xie Yanzheng, upon hearing this, raised his head, his gaze falling upon me. His brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. The Empress did not bestow the marriage on the spot this time. He said that marriage is a major event, and that he must discuss it with my parents first. This matter was glossed over quickly. The banquet music started up again. A young lady who was close to me couldn't help but lean in, asking in a low voice,
"Why didn't you choose the crown prince after such a good opportunity just now? Why didn't you pick the crown prince? Haven't you had a secret crush on him for many years?"
Petals drifted down, the pond water rippling, and the sunlight spilled over the water's surface, making me space out a bit as I watched. Actually, in my past life, I did choose him. At that time, his face was expressionless, as he coldly accepted my jade disc. When the Empress bestowed the marriage, he accepted the imperial decree and thanked her along with me. He was perfectly polite throughout. Yet, there wasn't a single shred of joy, as if he were at an office. After entering the Eastern Palace, I spent 3 dull years. Xie Yanzheng had a strict upbringing since childhood. He was taught that a monarch must not indulge in romance. Therefore, he precisely controlled the time he spent in the inner court. He only shared a bed with me twice a month, each time lasting no more than 2 hours. He ate 1 meal with me every day. If we ate at noon, he would not see me again in the evening. My parents' relationship was cold, so I didn't understand how normal couples interacted. I once thought this was mutual respect and harmony. I also thought Xie Yanzheng had some affection for me. After all, between the bed sheets, his cold eyes would soften, looking at me in a daze, as his deep voice called Yinzhang over and over again. But in the end, it was just my wishful thinking. After Zhang Peiyu appeared, only then did I realize he wasn't born cold and indifferent. It turned out he also possessed a heart full of passion and youthful wildness. Xie Yanzheng met Zhang Peiyu during his southern tour. At that time, heavy rains flooded the south, and he fell into the river, washing up at a village. It was the peasant girl Zhang Peiyu who saved him. He stayed at the Zhang household for 10 days. I do not know what happened during those few days. I only knew that after his return, he would often stare blankly at a wooden hairpin. Once, while we were sharing a bed, he held me by the waist and called out, not my name, but Ayue. My body went cold and stiff. Any desire for intimacy instantly gone. In a hoarse voice, I asked him, "Since your highness loves her so much, why not bring her into the palace?" The candle flames flickered, and the bed curtains swayed. He leaned over me and said softly, "She does not wish to be a concubine."
But I am already married and cannot offer her the position of formal wife, so I will not force it upon her.
Whenever her name came up, Xie Yanzheng would suddenly become very talkative.
She is different from other women. She has a bright personality, and she is a wonderful cook. She can swing an axe with such formidable grace. Remarkably spirited and untamed, she belongs to the vast mountains and fields. I cannot bear to lock her in the palaces and make her a caged bird.
That night, Xie Yanzheng spoke with great passion. He stayed in my chambers the entire night, but he blindfolded me with a red silk scarf, his gaze looking far beyond me, staring not at me, but at that person far away. I once thought that person would always remain, nothing more than a distant symbol to me. But the year Xie Yanzheng ascended the throne, she arrived. Zhang Peiyu became a maid serving in the imperial garden. When she stood before Xie Yanzheng, the normally composed emperor swayed on his feet. He wanted to speak, but it took him a long while before he managed managed to ask, "Why is Lady Zhang here?" Zhang Peiyue did not answer directly. She merely drew an old hair ribbon from her robe, embroidered with auspicious cloud patterns. It was an old item from his days as crown prince. He cradled the hair ribbon in his hands, his eyes brimming with tears.
This servant missed her beloved so deeply that she dared to scale the palace walls, solely to steal a few glimpses of him.
The April sunlight spilling over him was not hot, but gently warm. Xie Yanzheng clenched his fingertips, his throat bobbing repeatedly as he let out a sigh, his eyes filled with the joy of regaining what was lost. At that moment, I knew the harem's truly favored consort was about to appear. As expected, that very day, Xie Yanzheng decreed her title as a consort. The emperor, who had always abided by the rules, broke protocol for the first time by promoting a maid directly to imperial consort. Once consort Zhang entered the palace, she was showered with favor. Xie Yanzheng went to her quarters every single night, breeding resentment among the other consorts. Even the Empress Dowager could no longer stand by and asked me to advise the emperor. I brought it up to Xie Yanzheng a few times, and he finally took the advice, choosing the tablet of a lady of bright deportment. But because of this, Zhang Peiyue targeted me. That night, she did not go to the emperor. Instead, she barged into my palace chambers. Without even paying her respects, she gritted her teeth and sneered.
What is all this talk about sharing equally? Your Majesty just cannot bear to see me favored, but the Emperor and I are the ones truly in love. No matter how secure your position is, what is the use if you cannot keep his heart?
Xie Yanzheng had once told me that she was simple-minded and asked me to take extra care of her. So when she offended the Empress Dowager, I helped mediate. When she snatched my hair ornaments, I pretended not to notice. Even on the night of the full moon when she faked a nightmare to steal the emperor away, I did not stop her. But this time, in the presence of the servants, she actually dared to defy me to my face. If I continued to indulge her, news of the Empress's incompetence would spread throughout the city tomorrow. As the night shrouded the palace walls, I stared at her with my hands behind my back, scolding her in a cold voice. Consort Zhang has been insolent and defiant. Kneel in Changchun Palace until dawn before you leave. I did not resort to severe punishment. Merely punishing her to kneel was already showing consideration for Xie Yanzheng. Yet, I never expected this kneeling would actually cost a life. 4 hours later, a pool of fresh blood seeped from beneath Zhang Peiyu's skirt. Her body slumped to the side, and she fainted in the pool of blood. The imperial physician came to take her pulse and said she was pregnant, barely 2 months along. She had suffered a miscarriage because of this forced kneeling. I had never seen Xie Yanzheng fly into such a rage. The look in his eyes as he stared at me was filled with nothing but disgust.
How cruel you are, Empress. You tricked us into visiting someone else just so you could seize the chance to punish Consort Zhang. And to think us once believed the Empress was magnanimous and kind.
Just then, Zhang Peiyue woke up in his arms. There was no grief of losing a child on her face. Instead, she pursed her lips into a smile, her eyes brimming with victory. Suddenly, the harsh reality dawned on me. It turned out she had deliberately provoked me last night, just to make me punish her, sacrificing her child's life to drive a wedge between Xie Yanzheng and me. What calculation, what deep, dark cunning. Who says a peasant girl doesn't know how to play the schemes of the inner court? She was practically born for the harem. I wanted to explain, but he refused to listen. A person's heart is naturally biased, and his was biased beyond belief. Even though I had done nothing wrong, he docked my monthly allowance and placed me under house arrest. That day, as he carried her past me, he paused his steps, he said,
The Empress loves only power and knows nothing of affection. You cannot begin to understand the depth of love between us and Ayue. Should you dare do this again, I will depose you.
As he spoke, he gently tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, his eyes filled with a passionate love I had never seen before. I stood there dazed. How could I not understand affection? Many years ago, in the spring, the capital was in full bloom with pear blossoms. On my way home from an outing, I was caught in a sudden torrential downpour. The carriage wheels got stuck in the mud. It was he who escorted me home under an oiled paper umbrella. The April rain fell like pear blossoms onto his umbrella, one petal landing on his head, accentuating the youth's vibrant spirit. My heart skipped a beat at that very moment, and it remained fluttery for many years. Until later, when a bucket of cold water woke me up completely. I stayed in the palace for a very long time, only stepping out on the day of the ancestral sacrifice. By sheer coincidence, displaced victims started a riot that day. Someone shot a stray arrow from the shadows. I saw it. In that split second, many thoughts flashed through my mind. War was raging at the border. If something happened to the emperor, the country would fall into chaos, and the people would suffer. So I rushed forward and took the arrow for him. The arrow pierced through my back. I bled so much as I collapsed into his arms. In our 8 years of marriage, it was the first time I saw him look so terrified. He held me and ran all the way back to the palace. I slowly tightened my grip on his hand. Your Majesty, I too know what love feels like. Years ago, in front of the Cui Manor, Your Majesty gave me a sprig of pear blossom, and I was already deeply in love. It was only that your majesty had no feelings for me. An intense emotion surged wildly in his eyes. He held my hand, calling me Yinzhang, a name I hadn't heard in a long time.
Yinzhang, I understand now. I am here with you. You will not die.
I won the gamble. I bared my true heart to him, and he made peace with me. He began to visit my palace frequently, and I would slowly embrace him. After she left, I used a pillow to prop up my hips. I no longer cared about love. I only knew that, as the Empress, I needed to have a child, but my luck was too poor, and heaven ultimately did not grant my wish. Ever since I found favor, Zhang Peiyu made scene after scene. At first, Xie Yanzheng would patiently coax her, but eventually, he grew tired of it. The times he visited her grew fewer, and Jiang Pei gradually quieted down. Yet, every day during morning pay respects, I could always see the hatred in her eyes. My birthday banquet that year was exceptionally lively. Xie Yanzheng piled jewels before me, and had the wives of all officials come to pay homage. He even set off fireworks in the capital, all night long. That night, he stayed at Changchun Palace. The candlelight cast our intertwined silhouettes onto the window. When I woke up the next day, I heard Consort Zhang was looking for me, and that she had stood outside my palace all night. When I met with her, the dark circles under her eyes were very heavy. Surprisingly, she began to strike up a conversation with me, saying she entered the palace because she loved Xie Yanzheng, and also because Xie Yanzheng had promised her his whole heart.
Your Highness, I come from the countryside, where everyone practices monogamy. I cannot tolerate any compromise in love. If I cannot have all of it, I would rather have none. Are you very happy now that you have stolen his favor, Your Highness?
He looked up at me, the hatred in her eyes as thick as venom.
Do you believe me, Your Highness? I have a way to make His Majesty remember me for the rest of his life, and to ensure you will never receive his favor again.
I ignored her at the time, only thinking that I must be more careful in the future. But I did not expect there would be no future left. After Zhang Peiyu left, she hanged herself that very night. By the time she was discovered, she had already stopped breathing. Before she died, she left a suicide note containing only 10 words. The Empress went too far and forced me to my death. He died in his 4th year in the palace, in the year he loved him the most. Once a person is dead, they become the moon in the sky, and the living can never compete. When Xie Yanzheng came to find me, he was holding a sword in his hand.
We have treated you so well. Why did you have to drive Ayue to his death?
He did not believe me. No matter how I explained, it was all in vain. Zhang Peiyue used the most tragic method to sever all of his affection for me. That day, he almost killed me. Only when the servants stopped him did he throw down his sword and confine me to the cold palace. The winter was very cold. There was not even charcoal for fire in the room. My stomach ached terribly, and I wanted to summon an imperial physician. But Xie Yanzheng had ordered that no one was to see me. I was in pain for 3 days. It wasn't until the bedsheets were stained red with blood that I realized I had once been with child, but failed to save it. The pain of losing a child was too unbearable. So unbearable that all the pear blossoms in my heart withered. Xie Yanzheng and I finally reached the point of mutual loathing. He hated me for driving his beloved to death, and I hated him for causing the death of my child. He often wanted to depose me as Empress, yet, for some reason, it never succeeded. And so I guarded the empty palace, year after year. I thought he wished I were dead, just as I wished he would pass away sooner. But later, during an assassination attempt, he actually risked his life to save me. An emotion I could not understand flickered in his eyes. He wanted to touch my face, but lowered his hand.
What we owed you back then, we have now returned to you, Cui Yinzhang. In our next life, may we owe each other nothing.
The man I loved for half my life and hated for the other half died right in front of me. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, the pear blossoms were in full bloom once more, and spring was in the air. This time, I want to let him have his wish. Let us never have anything to do with each other again. The banquet ended. I walked out of the palace, preparing to head home. An eunuch rushed over and bowed to me.
Lady Cui, my prince requests your presence.
I recognized him as a servant close to Xie Yanzheng. I did not know why he was suddenly looking for me. With pear blossom branches reaching over the wall, he stood in the alley. I could not avoid him, so I could only curtsy properly. He looked down at me, his gaze carrying an air of scrutiny. After a long time, he spoke.
I thought you would choose me.
I was taken aback for a moment. In this lifetime, we had not had much interaction yet. I only knew that he loved inkstones, so I had once asked my brother to deliver one to him. Hearing that his leg was injured, I had begged my brother to take me to see him. My love had always been expressed very temperately. I took a step back, looking at the petals on the ground. Your Highness is high and mighty. This daughter of a minister would not dare harbor such thoughts. He fell silent again, his brow furrowed tightly, his lips pursed, and his aura was terrifyingly heavy. He was a restrained man, who rarely showed his emotions, having been husband and wife for many years. I knew this meant he was displeased. After a moment, he asked softly,
But didn't Miss Cui like me very much before? Since you like me, why the sudden change?
How could the current him know of my past feelings? In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through my mind, making me suspect that he had also been reborn. But how How could that be? His greatest wish in his past life was to have nothing to do with me. If he had those memories, he would absolutely not come looking for me now. Seeing that I remained silent, he took out that inkstone.
I knew this was a gift from you. At the gathering before the new year, you secretly glanced at me several times.
Not just at the gathering, but also at the tea parties and literary salons. You were always stealing glances at me, and when you were caught, you would quickly turn away. The spring breeze blew past. The willow trees brushed against the red walls. He stood among the blossoms, carrying a faint touch of melancholy.
You don't have to lie. I am no fool. So why, after all, is this?
So the love I thought was so well hidden was actually that obvious. Even if left unspoken, it would still escape through the eyes. With branches full of blossoms and steps of pure white, I bowed deeply to him. I was young and ignorant back then, and made a fool of myself before your highness. Now I understand the difference in our status, and view your highness solely as my sovereign. He stood frozen on the spot, lost in unknown thoughts. There were palace servants walking along the path, not wanting to linger. I quickly took my leave. I returned to my long-lost home. My father and brother were both at work. My mother wasn't home. I heard she had gone to the palace. I went back to my room and looked in the mirror, gazing at my 17-year-old self. The sunlight was just right. The girl in the mirror looked gentle, yet still a bit green, still young, still able to start over again. I took a nap under the warm sun. Before long, the housekeeper called me to the study. Pushing open the door, I saw my parents and my brother were all there. In my past life, after I fell from favor, I rarely got to see them. Seeing them now, I couldn't help but want to cry. My mother had met with the Empress, already knew about what happened at the banquet. She told my father and brother. I heard mother ask me, Yinzhang, why didn't you choose the crown prince? I knew they were very pleased with Xie Yanzheng.
Marrying the crown prince meant becoming the empress in the future.
The crown prince is of good character and would make a good husband.
My second brother also praised him for being excellent in both scholarly and martial arts. They spoke for a long time, looking at me full of expectation. As the sunlight streamed into the room, I only asked one question. What if I said, choosing him would lead to a miserable life for me? Would you still want me to marry him? The room fell completely silent. No one said a word. Father pondered for a moment and said,
If that is the case, then don't marry him. Being the mother of the nation is just for show. Your own happiness is what matters most.
Mother stroked my head and said,
The Cui family is already prominent and influential. We do not need to sell our daughter for wealth and glory.
As for my brother, he stood up and smiled.
I'm going to fight in battles in the future. I will uphold the family's honor. Yinzhang can live however she wants.
They didn't ask me why. The sunlight was so dazzling that it made me want to cry. I suddenly remembered that in my past life, there were 10 proposals to depose me as empress. If my father hadn't supported me and my brother hadn't fought desperately at the border, given Xie Yanzheng's hatred back then, I would have been finished long ago. My family will always be my backing.
However, even if I don't marry the crown prince, there is no need to choose the Prince of Qin. Father frowned and reminded you, the Prince of Qin is in poor health. You must think this through.
Because I declined the Empress and did not deliver the jade buy. In this lifetime, Xie Yanzheng and I finally have nothing to do with each other. Thinking of this, I breathed a sigh of relief. A few days later, the Grand Princess hosted a polo match. I went with my brother. I remember that in my past life, Xie Yanzheng did not attend. He was always busy with government affairs and had no love for such activities. But halfway through this match, I actually saw him up in the grandstand, dressed in a white robe. He sat very straight, looking completely out of place amidst the surrounding excitement. He looked over, his gaze falling upon me. I did not spare him a second glance, and continued playing, charging on horseback and swinging the mallet to score, all in one smooth motion. Amidst the cheers, my brother and I won again. That gaze followed me the entire time, but I did not look back, pretending not to notice. Not long after, the sound of scolding came from that direction. A eunuch had spilled a few drops while pouring tea. Xie Yanzheng was usually very composed, and would not care about such minor things. Yet today he actually lost his temper, frightening the eunuch so much that he trembled. I still could not help but steal a glance. His fingers tapped on the table, one after another, seemingly very irritated. The crowd surged over, blocking my view. I went to the lakeside alone to admire the flowers. The distant mountains were like a painting. The lake was calm, and the weeping willows swayed gently. It was originally a beautiful scene, yet someone just had to come and ruin my mood. I did not know why Xie Yanzheng was here. Spring brings frequent rain, and a light drizzle began to fall from the sky. He walked into the pavilion, closed his umbrella, and said,
Congratulations, Lady Cui, on your victory today. I shall grant you a reward. What do you want?
This was not the first time he had asked me what I wanted. In my past life, during the second year of our marriage, on my birthday, he asked me what present I wanted. In truth, I already had everything: wealth, fame, status, and a marriage that everyone envied. But there was indeed something I wanted. I asked him very carefully, could your highness come to spend the night with me more often? 5 times a month, 4 times, even 3 times would do. The evening wind was chillingly cold. He looked at me with an icy stare.
I am the heir to the throne. I must not indulge in female charms. As a virtuous crown princess, you ought to understand this.
His words left no room for discussion, so I could only shut my mouth. That year, he gifted me a lot of jewelry, but he still only came on the 1st and 15th of each month, so rarely that I could not conceive a child at all. Now, as the rain fell, the world was very quiet. I shook my head. This servant has nothing she desires from your highness. Fingering his sleeve, he asked again.
What if I insist on giving you something?
After a moment's thought, then pray that the country enjoys peace and prosperity, and that the state remains secure forever. With a cold sneer, pulled out a jade pendant and said,
This is for you.
I did not want to accept it, but he put down the pendant and walked away, seemingly angry once again. So angry that he didn't notice the rain had turned heavy, and I had not brought an umbrella. There certainly were many visitors to the pavilion today. Just as the crown prince left, the Prince of Qin arrived. Although it was spring, he was still wrapped in thick clothing. He picked up the jade pendant and said,
Since you do not want it, I will return it to Imperial Brother for you.
He put the jade pendant away and tilted his umbrella toward me. At the banquet that day,
Thank you, Miss Cui, for the jade disc, but you shouldn't have chosen me. I appreciate the gesture. I'm returning this jade to you.
I didn't take it. I looked up and asked him why he shouldn't have.
I am in poor health and won't live long. I am not a good match for you.
I recalled when I chose him in my past life. He was surprised at first, and then the corners of his mouth turned up, his eyes filled with pleasant surprise. But the joy quickly vanished, and he wrapped his coat tightly around himself again. I smiled slightly and asked him, But doesn't your highness like me? Since you like me, are you really going to push me away and watch me marry someone else? Not expecting me to be so direct, the Prince of Qin was stunned. In truth, in our past life, it took a very long time before I found out he had a secret crush on me. Back then, I had fallen out with Xie Yanzheng and was living in the cold palace. Everyone else avoided me, but Xie Zhen would always come to pay his respects whenever he entered the palace. Even if I didn't see him, he would still bow to me through the closed door. In the winter of that year, he was the one who sent the charcoal. Later, when my brother was injured, he was also the one who rushed to the frontier to save his life. Needless to say, I understood his feelings, but at the time, I was his imperial sister-in-law, so there could be no future for us. A physician cannot cure himself. He fell ill and passed away in the 8th year of Qinghe. Before he died, he forced himself to come and see me. I had once mentioned he looked good in purple, so he wore purple that day. Other than that, it was a most ordinary visit. The magnolias in the courtyard were in full bloom, white like snow, and filled with a rich fragrance, making his upright figure look extremely lonely as he left. After a moment's thought, I called out to him, but made no sound. I only mouthed the words, "In our next life." He understood. He was slightly stunned for a moment, then his eyes curved into a smile. It was unexpectedly more beautiful than the branches full of blossom. And now, the drizzle dampens his clothes. With his hidden feelings exposed by me, his cheeks flush slightly. He does not deny my words, but merely takes a step back and repeats, I am destined to live a short life.
I am truly not a good match.
I did not push him. I tell him, I heard that before long. The emperor will select consorts for the princes, so I will not participate then. If your highness mentions me, and the emperor asks for my opinion, I will nod and agree. I will only give your highness this one chance. What you do next is up to you, your highness. In my past life, at that consort selection banquet, he declined on the grounds of poor health, and remained alone for many years thereafter. Now, I have already taken a few steps toward him. What follows will depend on his own choice. The steps are wet. He remained silent, giving me his umbrella as we part. The Grand Princess says the spring rain falling all over the garden has a unique charm, insisting on dragging us to the imperial garden to enjoy the rain. Just then, the eunuch from the palace affairs office passes by leading this year's newly admitted maids. From afar, I seem to spot a familiar figure. I think my eyes are playing tricks on me, but that person's profile is strikingly similar to the one in my memory. Holding my umbrella, I hurriedly walk over. The eunuch from the palace affairs office bows to me, seeing that I keep staring at the second maid in the back row. He introduces her to me, saying she is a newcomer.
Destined for duty in the Eastern Palace, named Jiang Peya. Does Miss Cui know her?
I looked up in surprise. Jiang Peiyue, who was supposed to be in the south, had actually entered the palace at this time. It was 5 whole years earlier than in my past life. He looked at me, with a slight curl of his lips.
It seems Miss Cui still remembers me.
Jiang Peiyue said he wanted to exchange a few words with me. The eunuch simply did him a favor, and gave him the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. Behind the rockery in the imperial garden, he looked down at his pink palace maid uniform. In my past life, when I reunited with him in the imperial garden, this was exactly what I was wearing.
In those years, he truly cherished me like a rare treasure. That he and I would reach such an irredeemable point in the end, it was still because of you.
He looked at me. Even after a lifetime had passed, the hatred in his eyes had still not faded.
Back then, you struck first, to gain the upper hand, and snatch the position of his primary wife. But this time, I came to find him early. I will become his wife before you do. To love him dearly,
and grow old together with him. When Xie Yanzheng was mentioned, his gaze grew tender. It was just that he was being far too naive. Even if Xie Yanzheng were to love him again, an emperor's love could never be single-minded. Even if it wasn't me, there would be other concubines to share his favor. I don't know if your failure to choose him that day was just playing hard to get. But just as he was about to say more, I interrupted her. I will not compete with you. You can rest assured. I am tired. You may leave. He returned to the line of palace maids, about to head to the Eastern Palace, to see the person he had loved for 2 lifetimes. I still harbored resentment toward him, hating that he had once used his own life to frame me. So, I had people keep an eye on the situation in the Eastern Palace. Xie Yanzheng was still as busy with state affairs as usual, while Zhang Peiyue swept the courtyard. They had run into each other a few times, but the love at first sight he had anticipated, and the deep, tender affection never happened. Xie Yanzheng merely glanced at him, his expression calm, treating him as nothing more than an ordinary person. After this happened a few times, he grew somewhat anxious. In his desperation, he actually swapped shifts with someone to go and help the crown prince change his clothes, and even threw himself into his arms during the fitting, confessing his feelings. But what awaited him was not mutual affection. Instead, it was the crown prince's furious rage. Xie Yanzheng dodged him in disgust, ordered him to be flogged 30 times, and sent him to work in the imperial laundry. Yet, Zhang Peiyue did possess remarkable luck. The highly favored consort Zhao accidentally fell into the lake next to the imperial laundry. He was a skilled swimmer, so he leapt into the lake and rescued consort Zhao. In recognition of his meritorious deed in saving a life, the emperor granted him a personal audience and offered to fulfill one of his wishes. Zhang Peiyue knelt before the emperor and said he wanted to marry the crown prince. Choosing a crown princess required not just looks and talent, but even more so, a suitable family background. Naturally, the emperor would not agree to this. However, influenced by consort Zhao's sweet talk, His Majesty bestowed Zhang Peiyue upon the crown prince as a Liangyuan. After all that, he was still just a concubine. Yet, unlike in his past life, this time he was forced upon Xie Yanzheng. Xie Yanzheng merely gave him a disgusted look and settled him in the most remote courtyard, leaving him with the title of Liangyuan in name only, without ever consummating the marriage. While he struggled in misery, I lived a free and easy life, taking advantage of the fine spring weather. I invited a few companions out for a spring outing. The meadows were covered in green, and weeping willows lined the banks. We brought pastries and had a picnic together. I just didn't expect to run into Xie Zhen here. He came forward and greeted each of us in turn. I nodded politely with a calm expression, returned the greeting, and sat back down. I didn't chat with him much. Actually, I just didn't know what to say in front of him. I thought it would be better to see what his plans were after the consort selection banquet. Just then, my friend brought her 4th brother over. That 4th brother was very talkative, always having endless things to say. The moment he saw me, he came over to chat. Oh dear. Xie Zhen stood ahead, not moving, staring at us. Seeing that I was a bit thirsty, the 4th brother, being very attentive, immediately brought over some tea. Over there, Xie Zhen's brow furrowed, but the heavens did not cooperate. The sky quickly darkened, and heavy rain was imminent. Everyone hurried to their carriages to head home. However, the journey to the Cui manor was long, and before we could reach home, the torrential rain suddenly poured down. The wheels of the Cui family's carriage were truly terrible. On rainy days, they would definitely get stuck deep in the mud. No matter how hard the driver whipped the horses, it just wouldn't budge. The carriage from the Prince of Qin's estate had been following at a distance, and seeing this, it came to a halt. Amidst the thunder and lightning, someone braved the rain, holding a purple bamboo umbrella, and walked over.
If Miss Cui doesn't mind, you can take my carriage back to your manor.
I pulled back the carriage curtain, only to see Xie Zhen standing outside, his hair thoroughly drenched by the rain. I shook my head. Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness, but there is no need. I have nothing else to do today, so I'm in no hurry to return. I'll just shelter from the rain inside the carriage. Xie Zhen was met with a polite refusal, yet he still stood there, refusing to leave. The rain beat down, soaking his clothes. He curled his lips into a smile, a touch of helplessness showing in his eyes.
I truly want to escort Miss Cui back to her manor. I beg Miss Cui to do me the honor and grant me this wish.
I looked at him through the misty rain. His eyes were cast down. His tone softened considerably.
To be honest, Lady Cui, I was jealous today. I used to think that as a dying man, I was not worthy of you, Lady Cui. But what you said that day ultimately stirred some greed in my heart.
The eaves of the carriage jutted out a few feet, just enough to block the rain. I leaned half my body out, reached out to grab Xie Zhen's sleeve, and pulled him under the eaves. I did not let go, and he took the opportunity to lean closer.
I wanted nothing more than to pull that gentleman away from your side, Lady Cui. Such thoughts are absurd and truly lack decorum, but indeed my feelings were beyond control. Lady Cui, I seem to be babbling incoherently.
I looked at him with a smile. Leaning against the side of the carriage, he let out a low laugh.
Actually, I just wanted to say, I have liked you for a very long time, Lady Cui.
I asked him, at the banquet for selecting the consort, what does Your Highness plan to do? He reached out to brush away a stray petal from me.
I cannot wait for the consort selection banquet. Tomorrow, I will enter the palace to ask for your hand. So will you do me the honor of letting me send you back, Lady Cui?
I rode in the Prince of Qin's carriage. The downpour had just stopped, and the sun appeared. The carriage jingled as it went, stopping in front of the Cui manor. Before I went inside, he confirmed with me once more.
Then this matter is settled. You really won't regret it.
I understood his worry. He was afraid that if he passed away early, he would leave me to grieve alone. He was afraid that my status as a widow would make it difficult for me to marry again. But there was no need to worry so much. Living in this world, one should enjoy the moment. There is no need to worry about marriage. I nodded. I have no regrets. After looking at each other, we were just about to head inside, only to see Xie Yanzheng walking out from the alley. In a deep voice, he asked me what I didn't regret. I had heard that the crown prince recently left the palace, and often passed by the Cui residence. I originally thought it was just a rumor, but I didn't expect it to be true. I curtsied to him. We were speaking of my marriage to the prince. I have no regrets. But Xie Yanzheng suddenly stiffened. His eyes filled with caught-off-guard surprise. A moment later,
You say you are going to marry my brother.
yes, he slowly closed his mouth, his gaze darkening slightly.
Why?
I smiled slightly. Why else? Naturally, it is because your servant and the prince share mutual affection. His expression was conflicted. He opened his mouth, and only after a long while did he say with difficulty, "What if I told you?"
That I also, to you.
Before he could finish his sentence, my father and brother walked out of the residence to pay their respects to the crown prince and the Prince of Qin. Xie Yanzheng's words did not continue. In front of the ministers, he always maintained the dignity of the heir apparent. He lowered his head coldly and left without even stepping foot inside the residence. Xie Zhen drank a cup of tea and also took his leave. He said he couldn't wait until tomorrow. To prevent any complications, he would go to the palace to see the emperor today. And so, on that day, the Empress summoned me to the palace. At dusk, with the door curtains hanging low, the Empress sat in the main seat and said to me,
Yinzhang is a daughter of a noble family. You should plan for your clan. If you want power, you should choose the crown prince. If you do not care for power, and your father and brother only wish for your happiness, then for love, you should also choose the crown prince. You once told me that you liked him.
Someone seemed to be standing behind the curtain, casting a tall silhouette. I stared at the shadow and said softly, I did like him in the past, but I have completely given up on him now.
Since His Highness has no feelings for me, there is no need to force a marriage. What if he also has you in his heart now?
I had seen how Xie Yanzheng loved someone. It was grand and public, like an overwhelming tide. Whether in my past life or this one, his feelings for me were far too shallow. Right now, it was merely the obsession with what he couldn't have at play. Your handmaiden only wishes to marry the Prince of Qin, Your Majesty. Upon hearing this, the Empress let out a quiet sigh. Agar wood burned lightly in the room, its smoke drifting through the air. The soft sigh fell, sounding exceptionally clear in the silence.
Crown Prince, your mother has done all she could. His mind is made up, and I am powerless to change it.
Someone slowly stepped out from behind the curtain. Xie Yanzheng's jaw was tightly clenched, his brow furrowed with deep sorrow. Yet, no matter how unwilling he was, he could only watch as the imperial decree for the marriage was issued. He returned to the Eastern Palace in grief, where Zhang Peiyue was waiting to welcome him. I heard that when Zhang Peiyue tried to drape a coat over him, he brusquely brushed her off. The love from the past life was gone. He looked at her with nothing but utter disdain. Xie Yanzheng was not a heavy drinker, yet he got drunk that night. I do not know what he muttered in his sleep, but I know Zhang Peiyue threw a massive tantrum, failing to secure his love, and with her lover suddenly turning cold. She could not bear such a drastic fall from grace. Clearly, the issue lay with Xie Yanzheng, yet she directed her hatred toward me. It seemed that nothing mattered to her, except romance. After being rejected coldly by Xie Yanzheng yet again, he returned to his room, left a note, and hung himself with a white rope. He wanted to copy what he did before, using his own death to make Xie Yanzheng remember him for a lifetime. He still hated me too, refusing to let me off the hook. The content of that note was very familiar. Only this time, the name had changed. Cui Yinzhang bullied me too harshly, forcing me to seek death. The note was found by the servants and soon spread around. He thought that just like in his past life, a single piece of paper could ruin me forever. But this time was different. The crown prince had no feelings for him, and I had no interaction with him either. As long as anyone investigated, they would know this was a deliberate frame-up. As for why he wanted to harm me, there were many rumors. Some said she was just a peasant girl who envied my wealthy family background. Some said she was lonely and helpless, coveting the love my family gave me. Others said he loved the crown prince, but the crown prince liked me, and so he harbored a grudge because of it. But no matter which version it was, I was completely innocent, while Zhang Peiyue was revealed as a person of vile character, becoming the target of public condemnation. Unlike the grand funeral of the past life, his body was wrapped in nothing but a straw mat. I heard that after seeing the note, Xie Yanzheng stood stood dazed for a long time. It wasn't sadness, but confusion. He locked himself in his room for 3 days. When he finally came out, he ignored the documents on his desk and paid no mind to the pouring rain, running straight to the gates of the Cui residence, demanding to see me. When I walked out, holding an umbrella, his clothes were completely soaked, and he looked utterly disheveled. He looked up at me, his eyes rimmed with dark red, and his lips trembled. He said, "So,
When Zhang Peiyue took her own life back then, it actually had nothing to do with you, right? But I actually believed it. I hated you for so many years. Just like this time, it was all his own act from beginning to end, right?"
I was stunned for quite a while, before it finally registered. He had also remembered his past life. I nodded. He used 2 of his lives, one after another, to tear us apart. Once with the child in his belly, creating a rift between us, the other time with his own life, making us hate each other from then on. How absurd things in this world are. Zhang Peiyue's suicide this time turned out to be a blessing in disguise, proving my innocence in our past life. The moonlight was gentle, and the heavy rain poured down. Xie Yanzheng asked me in a hoarse voice,
"This time, there is no Zhang Peiyue. Can we be a loving emperor and empress?"
"Didn't we agree to owe each other nothing in the next life?" Rainwater streamed down his face, looking like tears.
"But I regret it."
"Your Highness, you don't actually like me right now. It is merely vanity playing tricks on you, and an obsession that is hard to let go." Yet he grabbed my sleeve, a miserable smile on his lips.
"What if I say I have always liked you? I have liked you since my past life."
Xie Yanzheng said. He had seen that I liked him even before we married. But as the crown prince, too many people tried to flatter him on purpose. Sincerity was mixed with self-interest. He thought I was the same, loving only his position. He did not want to lose himself, so he always strictly controlled the number of times he saw me after our marriage. Later, he went south and met Zhang Peiyue. Zhang Peiyue did not know his identity when saving him. It was the first time someone laid a pure heart before him, not for his status as the crown prince, but simply because he was himself. Zhang Peiyue had no powerful family backing her. She was all alone. He could let his guard down, so he thought. If his affection had to go somewhere, then let it be to Zhang Peiyue.
But I couldn't help wanting to see you. Before you, I always seemed so prone to losing my composure.
This had made him feel afraid. When I heard the palace maid say you caused Zhang Peiyue's miscarriage, my first reaction wasn't grief, but relief. I had been married to him for years, never making a single mistake. Now, I had finally made one. He told himself over and over, "She isn't actually that perfect, so do not fall for her." He punished me with utter disregard, as if to prove he really wasn't moved. Until the day of the memorial service, when you rushed forward to take a blade for me and collapsed into my arms. At that moment I knew. I could no longer hold back. I couldn't sever my emotions and desires like my father had told me to. And so came the favor that followed. But later still, Zhang Peiyue took her own life, and he fell out with me.
I hated it completely. I brought up deposing the Empress many times, but I never actually intended to depose you. That day when I saved you, there was no time to weigh pros and cons. It was pure instinct.
The rain kept falling. He said a great deal, and I listened to a great deal, listening until my face grew weary. "Your Highness, if you are finished speaking, please go back." A faint light flickered in his eyes. A puddle had pooled on the ground before us, silently reflecting his shadow. In a daze, it felt like returning to that year, when a torrential downpour filled the sky, and pear blossoms filled the space. A single raindrop shattered the puddle, instantly scattering the reflection. The feelings of the young girl from that year had, in the end, completely withered away. Holding my umbrella, I turned and walked away. "Your Highness, the past is gone. Do not cling to old dreams. I am not a particularly kind person, nor are there any pure and innocent women in noble families. I once hated him to the core and wanted him dead. Later, he saved my life. When he drew his last breath in front of me, that day, I suddenly thought, let it end here. If there is a next life, it is enough if we are just strangers." As for Zhang Peiyue, I also felt hatred. I never intended for him to live. I knew Xie Yanzheng was a deeply suspicious man. Love is all about timing. By appearing before her in such a rush to force a marriage, he would definitely arouse suspicion. Xie Yanzheng would never love a woman who threw herself at him. The thing he sought was destined to fail. So, either he would be executed by Xie Yanzheng in the future, or he would commit suicide in utter resentment and pain. That was his destined end. And I watched with absolute clarity as he walked toward his ruins step by step. The date for my wedding with the Prince of Qin was set for the transition between late spring and early summer. It should have been a joyous occasion, but upon finding out Xie Yanzheng went to see the emperor, no one knew what was said, but word got out that the emperor flew into a towering rage. He had always been a mild-tempered man, yet on that day he swept all the documents off the desk and onto the floor.
"Have all the books we taught you to read been in vain? Do you have any idea what you are saying? She is your younger brother's betrothed? Do you intend to steal your brother's wife?"
He threw an inkstone at Xie Yanzheng's head, causing blood to pour instantly. The crown prince was confined to the eastern palace, and even the empress's pleas on his behalf were of no use. Seeing this, the other princes began to stir and make their moves, gathering their factions and plotting. Finally, Xie Yanzheng regained his composure. In his past life, he wasn't a good husband, but he was a good emperor. After ascending the throne, he reformed corrupt policies, reduced taxes, drove out enemies, and promoted the imperial examinations. Because he touched the nobility's interests, he was often targeted for assassination. After all, having been raised as the heir since childhood, his political vision was indeed stronger than his brother's. Once the restriction on the eastern palace was lifted, he quickly launched counterattacks against those brothers who wanted to usurp him. While he was busy with his state affairs, I was busy with my wedding. On the day Xie Zhen and I married, the pomegranate flowers were a fiery red, and the red candles flickered, reflecting a beautiful face. But someone interrupted my wedding night. It was the personal eunuch from Xie Yanzheng's side. He carried a red tray, upon which lay a seal, engraved with the words,
His Highness said that those auspicious words, since others have already spoken them, he will not repeat them. He simply wishes you and the prince peace and safety.
Xie Zhen looked at the seal and gave a soft, cold laugh.
Thank the imperial brother on this prince's behalf. Today is this prince's grand wedding, so I will not keep you, eunuch.
He sent the man away with calm composure, then casually tossed the seal aside. As the curtains fell, the man pressed down upon me, yet it fulfilled all the expectations I had for my wedding night in my youth. 4 years later, Xie Yanzheng ascended the throne. As was the custom, my elder brother went to the battlefield. This time, I gave him detailed instructions for a long time, and had Xie Zhen prepare many medicines for him. Xie Yanzheng remained unmarried, leaving the position of Empress vacant. I heard that he often entered Changchun Palace at night, sitting there the whole night through. There were rumors that he did not install an Empress because he was in love with me. Hearing this, I merely smiled. I packed my bags and went south with Xie Zhen. Trapped in the deep palace in my past life, I had never seen the rivers and mountains of my homeland. Now, I only wanted to turn the poems I read as a child into the path beneath my feet. We visited the Gobi Desert, witnessed the gentle drizzle of Zhangnian, watched the tides by the sea, and counted the stars at the foot of the mountains. Xie Zhen and I even had a child, a boy. He looks like me, but has his personality. This time, Xie Zhen lived a bit longer than in his past life. He said he originally had no attachment to this world, but now, he wants to live a little longer, to spend more time with me and the child. The year our child turned 8, he fell gravely ill. His body grew weaker and weaker, coughing during the day, with blood staining his handkerchief. Fearing I would worry, he quietly hid it away. But in the end, he could not defy fate. That day, Xie Zhen and I were enjoying the spring scenery in Mingzhou. There was a pear tree by the water, its branches hanging over the surface, covered in white blossoms. We sat beneath the pear tree, the warm spring sunlight spilling over us. He began to talk with me about the past, saying that many years ago, I burst into his sight wearing a red dress. He could never forget it since then. He said on our wedding day, he was so afraid of any mishap and was incredibly nervous. He also said that by today, his wishes had been fulfilled and he had no regrets. Yinzhang, I have truly had a very, very good life. As he kept talking, he gently leaned against my shoulder and slowly closed his eyes, as if he had fallen asleep. A pear blossom petal fell on his head. He didn't brush it off. He never opened his eyes again. I brought Xie Zhen back to the capital to be buried. It was only after returning to the capital that I found out. Xie Yanzheng had actually been ill for a long time. The imperial physicians had examined him many times and said it was an illness of the heart. An illness of the heart cannot be cured. He probably didn't have many days left. After Xie Zhen was buried, Xie Yanzheng met with me. Time had left too many marks on him. The young man from back then now had a face full of vicissitudes. He sat on the bed and asked in a hoarse voice if I wanted to be the Empress Dowager. He had no children. The ministers advised him to adopt a successor from a relative's family. I understood the meaning behind his question. With the curtain hanging down, I smiled slightly. Your Majesty may write your will. He looked at me, somewhat dazed. His gaze drifted far away.
Yinzhang hasn't changed, yet I have aged so much. Do you still hate me?
There was only peace left in my eyes. We've had no connection in this lifetime, so there is no love or hate to speak of. He was taken aback, and after a long silence, let out a bitter smile.
I understand. There is nothing else I can do, except do my best to leave your child a peaceful empire.
In the 12th year of Qinghe, Xie Yanzheng died of illness. The history books say he worked diligently and died of exhaustion at his desk. He had left a will beforehand, passing the throne to the son of the Prince of Qin. As the mist dispersed, the courtyard was filled with the spring breeze. I returned once again to the deep palaces. From now on, this life will be filled with good days,